The lesson you are about to view is designed to assist Army commanders in understanding the Army's policy on transgender soldiers, so leaders can implement the policy while maintaining morale, readiness, and good order and discipline. It will also provide you with information you need to train subordinate soldiers on the policy, and assist soldiers who have a medical diagnosis indicating that gender transition is medically necessary through the gender transition process. This presentation will cover transgender policy, gender transition process, prohibitions on harassment and discrimination, terminology surrounding transgender issues, the responsibilities of a soldier transitioning to a new gender, the command responsibilities in these instances, and military medical provider responsibilities. The presentation will conclude with a number of vignettes outlining situations which leaders may face. In July 2015, the Secretary of Defense directed the Department of Defense to identify practical issues related to transgender Americans serving openly in the military, and to develop an implementation plan that addresses those issues consistent with military readiness. On June 30th, 2016, the Secretary announced a new policy allowing open service of transgender service members. He outlined 3 reasons for this change. Number 1, that the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard need to avail themselves of all available talent in order to remain the finest fighting force the world has ever known. Number 2, that there are transgender service members in uniform today. DoD has a responsibility to them and their commanders to provide clear and more consistent guidance. And number 3, those who want to serve and can meet the department's standards should be afforded the opportunity to compete to do so. Army Directive 2016-35, the Army Policy on Military Service of Transgender Soldiers, directs that the Army is open to all who can meet the standards for military service and readiness, and remains committed to treating all soldiers with dignity and respect while ensuring good order and discipline. Again, this training module provides you with basic information on DoD and Army policy, allowing transgender soldiers to serve, and an overview of roles, responsibilities, and policies. The Army allows transgender soldiers to serve openly. Consistent with this policy, the following principles apply. No soldier may be involuntarily separated, discharged, or denied reenlistment or continuation of service solely on the basis of the soldier's gender identity. All soldiers will be treated with respect and dignity, and good order and discipline will be maintained. Transgender soldiers will meet the same standards as any other soldier based on their gender identity as recorded in the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System, commonly known as DEERS. These include grooming, height and weight, physical fitness, and drug testing. Army medical providers diagnose and provide medically necessary care and treatment for transgender soldiers eligible for military medical care in accordance with the guidance for transgender care issued by the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs and the Army Surgeon General. That guidance requires that a soldier with a diagnosis from a military medical provider indicating that gender transition is medically necessary will be provided medical care and treatment to make that gender transition. Once this care has occurred, 2 administrative actions take place. 1, after medical care has been identified and approved and takes place, a transgender soldier is considered gender transition complete. 2, once this gender transition complete status has been reached, the soldier's gender marker in DEERS is changed to indicate that the soldier is now of that gender and must adhere to those military standards. Soldiers who are transitioning genders or who have transitioned to a new gender are entitled to be free of harassment and discrimination. Existing Army rules and regulations on harassment, discrimination, and equal opportunity apply both on and off duty. Commanders will ensure that good order and discipline are adhered to. Army leaders retain the authority provided by law and DoD and Army regulations to counsel, discipline, and involuntarily separate those service members who fail to obey established standards. Leaders need to understand the terms involving gender identity. These next 2 slides will outline those terms. Terms to be aware of are gender identity, which is a soldier's internal or personal sense of being male or female. Gender dysphoria, which is a medical diagnosis that refers to distress that some transgender individuals experience due to a mismatch between their gender identity and their sex assigned at birth. The condition can manifest in a person as a strong and persistent cross-gender identification and a discomfort with their biological sex, or a sense of inappropriateness in the gender role of that sex. Medically necessary? These are healthcare services or supplies which prevent, diagnose, or treat an illness, injury, condition, disease, or its symptoms, and that meet accepted standards of medicine. It can be medically necessary to treat gender dysphoria. Real-life experience. This term applies to the period in a soldier's gender transition process when they begin living socially in the gender role which is consistent with their gender identity. This normally occurs first in an off-duty status and before a DIR's gender marker change takes place. Preferred gender is the gender of the soldier after the gender transition is complete and the gender marker is changed in DIRs. Gender marker, as we have discussed previously, is the identification of the soldier's gender in the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System. A transgender soldier is a soldier who has received a medical diagnosis indicating that gender transition is medically necessary. This soldier can intend to begin the process, be undergoing the transition process, or be finished with the process and is stable in their preferred gender. The gender transition process, as we have already discussed, begins when a soldier receives the diagnosis from a military medical provider, indicating that a soldier's gender transition is medically necessary, and concludes when the DIR's gender marker is changed. The process can also begin when a military medical provider confirms a civilian medical diagnosis, indicating that a gender identity change is required. Stable and preferred gender occurs when the medical care identified or approved by a military medical provider in a documented medical treatment plan is complete, no functional limitations or complications persist, and the individual soldier is not experiencing clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Medical care, including but not limited to cross-sex hormone therapy, may still be required to maintain a state of stability. Each party to the gender transition process has responsibilities they must meet. The transgender soldier must initiate the process and must meet Army standards, including being prepared to deploy to an austere environment throughout the transition process. Military medical providers must provide a diagnosis to the transgender soldier, develop a treatment plan, provide medical treatment, and confirm when the treatment plan is complete. Commanders must maintain unit readiness while supporting the transgender soldier, approve the timing of the medical treatment plan to ensure it does not impinge on unit readiness, and improve the soldier's gender marker change in DIRs upon submission of a completed request. Commanders should approach a soldier undergoing gender transition in the same way they would approach a soldier undergoing any medically necessary treatment. Commanders will continue to minimize effects to the mission and ensure continued unit readiness. This slide looks in more detail at the transgender soldier responsibilities. As you can see, the soldier has the obligation to initiate the process and work with the military medical team on a treatment, and must work with the commander to ensure that unit readiness is not adversely impacted. The soldier also must meet the appropriate military appearance, grooming, and physical fitness standards during and after gender transition. Finally, soldiers must use the billeting, bathroom, and shower facilities associated with the gender marker in DIRs. Soldiers must be prepared to deploy to an austere environment. It is important to note that reserve component soldiers seeking gender transition and who are diagnosed by a civilian medical provider must have that diagnosis and treatment plan confirmed by a military medical provider. This slide outlines the responsibilities of Army medical providers. Army medical providers will diagnose and provide medically necessary care and treatment for transgender soldiers eligible for military medical care, in accordance with the guidance for transgender care issued by the Assistant Secretary of Defense and the Army Surgeon General. A soldier eligible for military medical care with a diagnosis from a military medical provider indicating that gender transition is medically necessary, will be provided medical care and treatment for the diagnosed medical condition. Medical providers will advise the commander and soldier on how treatment will impact soldier and unit readiness. The medical provider informs both the commander and soldier when treatment is complete. Guidance for medical teams is outlined in a memorandum issued on July 29, 2016, and guidance issued by the Army Surgeon General on August 3, 2016. Additional guidance will be published as required. Commanders should approach a soldier undergoing gender transition in the same way they would approach a soldier undergoing any medically necessary treatment. Commanders will continue to minimize effects to the mission and ensure continued unit readiness. These methods can include adjusting the date on which the soldier's gender transition or any component of the gender transition process will begin, advising the soldier of the availability of options for extended leave status or participation in other voluntary absence programs during the gender transition process, in accordance with Army Regulations 600-8-10. Processing requests for exceptions to policy associated with gender transition in accordance with Paragraph 5 of Army Directive 2016-35. Establishing or adjusting local policies on the use of billeting, bathroom, and shower facilities, subject to regulation by the military during the gender transition process. Commanders will ensure that all soldiers are treated with dignity and respect. Commanders must approve a completed request change a soldier's gender marker in DEERS within 30 days for active component soldiers and within 60 days for reserve component soldiers. To reiterate, commanders must balance individual soldier welfare with unit readiness. Commanders must not deny a soldier medically necessary treatment, but the timing of the treatment can vary depending on unit mission. Please note the key comments on this slide. This slide notes the key contacts for issues regarding the Army transgender policy. The Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs has established a Service Central Coordination Cell composed of medical, legal, and military personnel experts to provide advice and assistance to commanders, address their inquiries, and process requests for exceptions to policy in connection with gender transition. This slide outlines the process of seeking exceptions to policy. In general, soldiers are expected to comport with the standards of their gender marker in DEERS. If a soldier undergoing gender transition is unable to meet a particular Army standard as a result of medical treatment or other aspects of the soldier's gender transition, the soldier's chain of command, together with the soldier and/or military medical provider, should consider options, for example, adjusting the date of a physical fitness test or extended leave options, other than requesting an exception to policy to depart from Army standards. If submitted, a request for an exception to policy to depart from the standards of a soldier's gender marker in DEERS must be processed according to the procedures outlined here and will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. An inactive National Guard soldier should submit the exception to policy request to the Director, Army National Guard. When submitting an exception to a policy request, the soldier must identify the specific policy for which the soldier is seeking an exception and explain the reason for the request. The request must be accompanied by a medical diagnosis from a military medical provider or a civilian medical provider if the soldier is ineligible for military medical care, an approved medical treatment plan identifying medically necessary treatment, and a projected schedule for such treatment, and an estimated date for completion of the treatment pursuant to the medical treatment plan. No later than 60 days after receipt of a request, the recipient of the request must forward the request through the first general officer in the chain of command to the Service Central Coordination Cell. The recipient must provide a recommendation for action on the exception request, an assessment of the expected effects the exception will have on mission readiness and on the good order and discipline of the unit. Commanders should include in their assessment a discussion of what other actions not requiring deviation from Army policies they considered, or used and why the actions were ineffective or inadequate. We will now go through a series of specific situations which commanders and leaders may face when dealing with transgender soldiers. In this situation, a soldier who was assigned a male gender at birth lives as a female off-duty. This situation comes to the attention of leadership. The soldier has no medical diagnosis and is not seeking medical treatment. Note the considerations and responsibilities of the command in the right-hand column. Pause the video if you need more time to read the slide. In this vignette, a soldier who was assigned as female at birth has notified her first sergeant that she identifies as male and would like to be treated as a male, although she has not yet gone to a military medical provider for a formal diagnosis. Note the actions in the right-hand column the leader must take. Please pause the video if you need more time to read the slide. In this scenario, a soldier is transitioning to become female and has a medical treatment plan approved by a military medical provider. The plan includes taking female hormones and is expected to take 5 months. However, after 5 months, it is becoming difficult for the soldier to meet male body composition and PT standards, although the medical treatment plan is not complete. Note the actions leaders must take. Pause this video while you read the right-hand column. In this situation, a soldier assigned as a male has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and has a medical treatment plan with a 7-month estimated completion date. After 3 months, a military medical provider determines that surgery is necessary for this soldier. This adds 6 months to the treatment time, and the unit is expected to deploy 2 months before the treatment plan is finished. Pause the video and read the considerations and responsibilities of the commander in the right-hand column. In this vignette, a soldier assigned female at birth transitioned to male. The soldier has recently undergone medically necessary sex reassignment surgery. Unfortunately, he has developed severe complications related to the recent surgical procedure that will require additional procedures and an extended period of non-deployable time. Pause the video and read the comments in the right-hand column. A soldier has completed Army gender transition from female to male as indicated in DEERS. The soldier did not have sex reassignment surgery and recently stopped taking male hormones in order to try and start a family. Today, the soldier approached his commanding officer to discuss his newly confirmed pregnancy. What action should you take? Pause the video and read the right-hand column. This vignette applies to reserve component soldiers. In this scenario, a soldier is a member of the IRR and does not have access to a military medical provider. She is transitioning to male and has changed her birth certificate and driver's license to male. The soldier wants to be considered male by the Army. Pause the video and read the steps involved at right. This vignette addresses one of the most sensitive issues involving transgender soldiers. A soldier transitioned from male to female as indicated in DEERS. The soldier did not have sex reassignment surgery. The transgender service member is using the female showers and has expressed privacy concerns regarding the open base shower configuration. Similarly, other soldiers have expressed discomfort showering with a female who has male genitalia. Pause the video and read the considerations and responsibilities of the command. This vignette addresses issues that could come up during routine urinalysis testing. A soldier transitioned from female to male as indicated in DEERS. The soldier did not have sex reassignment surgery. The transgender soldier is randomly selected to undergo a urinalysis test at his new command. Pause the video and read the right-hand column. In this final vignette, a transgender soldier arrived in the CENTCOM area of responsibility to serve as an advise and assist mentor to female police officers. The country of assignment specifically requires female trainers for their female police officers. The country has widespread anti-LGBT sentiment and criminal penalties for violations of those social norms. This female soldier may or may not have had sex reassignment surgery. Pause the video and read the considerations and responsibilities in the right-hand column. This concludes the briefing on the Army's policy regarding transgender soldiers articulated in Army Directive 2016-35. We have discussed transgender policy, the gender transition process, prohibitions on harassment and discrimination, terminology surrounding transgender issues, the responsibilities of a soldier transitioning to a new gender, the command responsibilities in these instances, and military medical provider responsibilities. If you have more detailed questions, reach out to your Command Judge Advocate General.